themselves.
No one cares about your stupid vacation.
Some people treat others poorly.
Do what Diana said. There's certain things that are right and there's certain things that are wrong. So don't believe what they're saying about everybody.
Some people only care about the invite.
There are
Some people don't seem worth the time. But the truth is, most people are just working to get by. Most people are terrified to reveal their scars. Most people are fighting a physical battle. Most people are worth the effort because all people are created in the image of God. All people carry the glow of the divine. All people matter enough for God to become one of them.
I like that video because it's about people, and I like it because it's called Some People, right? You ever said that? Some people. You know, people are the source of some of our greatest struggles. Have you noticed? Sometimes some of our greatest stresses, sometimes our greatest anxieties, sometimes our greatest struggles, it's people. If there just weren't these people around, we'd be just fine, right? But it's also true that people can be one of the sources of our greatest strength. One of the greatest sources of our power and strength can be the people around us. We're in the middle of a series about power, about how can we be fully charged. We've been looking at this memory verse, and I really encourage you, as I've said the last couple weeks, I really encourage you to memorize this verse. I really encourage you to meditate on it. Think about it as we go through this series. And so if you don't mind, again, we're going to read it together again. 2 Peter 1:3. Let's go ahead and read through that verse together. Here's what it says. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. Now, hold on a second. We're going to start over. I only usually do this in kids' church, but I can barely hear you. All right? So, with great boldness and great expression, let's say this verse together. Here we go. Ready? His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of Him who called us to His own glory and excellence. God says, I've got power for you. I have power available to you. I want you to live a powerful life. But the question of this series is, how do we plug into that? How do we plug into the power that's available to us? Because if that's what He wants for us, if that's what He offers us, man, what a shame for us to live powerless lives. When He says, I want to give you power, I want to give you the ability to live bold, powerful lives for me. So the very first week, we talked about how we learned about how to add these things. He said, if you make every effort to add these things to your faith, right? You have faith in Jesus Christ. He said, add to that virtue and knowledge and self-control and steadfastness and godliness, brotherly affection and love. He says, man, when you possess those things and those things are growing in your life, you're going to have God's power at work in you and through you. So that was the first week. The second week we learned about this. Last week we talked about praying for power. Man, you ought to be praying for power. Paul prayed, we looked at a passage where he was praying for other people. God, give them power, give them strength. And that's something we should pray for each other. And it's something we ought to pray for ourselves. God, give me power. If you feel powerless, pray, God, give me power. Give me strength through the power of your Holy Spirit in me, that I may be glorify you with my life because of the power that you've given to me. Today we're going to talk about the power of people. We should be empowered by the people around us, and we should have people around us. We should help empower them as well. Listen to what Paul said in Romans chapter 1, verse 11 and 12. He said, for I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. And I like that passage because it kind of seems like Paul kind of interrupts himself. He kind of stops in the middle of the thought because his first thought there is, man, I really want to come see you guys. These are people, he was writing to people in Rome. He had not been to Rome. These are mostly people he had not met. And he's saying, man, I would love to come to see you because I think I could strengthen you. I think I could empower you. I think I could help you. But I love how right kind of in the middle of that thought, he kind of breaks that off and he says, it's like he reminded himself that they also could empower him, that they also could strengthen him. So it was going to be a mutual thing. I can strengthen you and you can strengthen me. We can empower one another. And one of the things that makes that so interesting to me is who is writing that. I mean, think about the Apostle Paul. He is probably one of the most powerful Christians in history, right? I mean, think about the challenges he faced, the persecution he faced, and he just kept on going. The times he was stoned and left for dead, the times when he was in prison, the times when he faced opposition, and even the times when he was betrayed by what he thought were friends. He went through an awful lot of things in his life. And yet he still planted a ton of churches and strengthened churches. And he still trained up ministry leaders. He still wrote letters to churches, many of which we still have in our Bible today, to still encourage us and empower us still 2,000 years later. This was a powerful man of God. And yet I love that he says, not only can I empower you, but man, I think you can encourage me too. I think you can strengthen me. You can empower me. So I just encourage us, let it be that this morning as we think about this message, I just want to ask you to have both perspectives. I want you to have the one perspective that says, what can I do to empower other people, but also have the perspective that says, what can I do so that other people can empower me? All right? So I want to invite you to another passage written by Paul. This is in 1 Thessalonians 5:14. If you have your Bible with you, I encourage you to open there. 1 Thessalonians 5:14. So Thessalonians was written by Paul to a group of believers in a city called Thessalonica. And Paul had actually started the church there, if you remember. But it's interesting, we're not going to go back and read it, but it's interesting to read through how it describes it in the book of Acts. This was a rough town for Paul. Paul went into that town and he preached the gospel. Some people started getting saved. So this new little baby church was planted, but then this mob rose up and started dragging, specifically mentioned a guy named Jason. They dragged this new Christian, dragged him out of this house and started beating on him. It just becomes this literally a violent situation. And it drives Paul out of town. So Paul goes on to the next town. He starts preaching the gospel in another town. But back in Thessalonica, they were so stirred up and angry about what Paul was doing that they followed him to the next town. And they stirred up opposition against him there. It drove him out of that town as well. And I say that to have you think about the background for these Thessalonians. The situation they were living in. They were in a very hostile place for the gospel. And yet, despite that, the church was planted. And despite that, the church grew. And so Paul is writing this book to them, this letter to them, 1 Thessalonians we call it. He's writing this letter to them to encourage them and to commend them and to instruct them. And we're just going to look at this one verse this morning, 1 Thessalonians 5:14, because in this verse I think we see 4 different ways that God says these are 4 ways that we can empower each other. These are 4 ways that you can empower somebody who needs power from you. These are 4 ways that other people can empower you when you need it. And here's what he says, 1 Thessalonians 5:14. He says, and we urge you, brothers, admonish the idle, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with them all. We're going to look at those 4 things. First of all, he says to empower each other, we need to admonish the idle. What does it mean to be idle? The word idle doesn't just mean to do nothing, right? That's how we might use the word. You just kind of idle. This word means more than that. It was actually used a lot in a military context to describe a soldier who had fallen out of rank, to describe a soldier who was kind of marching his own way, doing his own thing. In other words, he was insubordinate. This is written to, so originally it's kind of meant to describe that. In a military context, a soldier who was out of line. And then it began to be used more broadly to describe anybody like that, not just in the military, but in general. Somebody who's out of line. Somebody who's not doing what they ought to be doing. Somebody who is wayward and they're out of step with what should be going on. That's the idea here. That's what it means by an idle person. So they're shirking their responsibilities. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing things they're not supposed to do. Someone like that certainly is not going to be living a powerful life for God. Because they're only focused on themselves. They're focused on what they want to do and what they think they want to do. And it doesn't matter what God wants them to do. It doesn't matter what the church says they ought to do. That's the idea here of this kind of person, an idle person. So what does Paul say is our responsibility to a brother or sister like that? And the word he uses here is admonish. We don't use the word admonish a lot, right? Admonish them. The word admonish means warn them. You need to warn them. We warn people when there's danger ahead. We admonish the idle because we're saying, look, if you keep going down this path, something bad's going to happen. You're not in a good situation. We need to warn you about what's going on. Now let's get really practical for a moment. Do you love others enough to admonish them? Because if we think about this as just nice words on a page, again, I don't mean to be heavy, but this is a little bit heavy. Because the reality is when somebody's out of line, it's hard to admonish them, right? It can be messy. It can be difficult. It can be, we've kind of gotten in the habit of, I'll just mind my own business. You know what I mean? If that's what they're going to do and that's where they're going to go, and I guess, I wish they weren't doing it, but I guess it's really none of my business. But the point is, it is our business. Because we love them. Are we willing to love people enough to admonish them when we see them going down a wrong path? Now, flip it around for a moment. Will you let others admonish you? That's a whole other thing, isn't it? Are you willing to let people come to you when they think you're out of line, when they think you're going down the wrong path, when they think you're doing something you should not be doing? Are you open to that? Are you open to somebody coming to you and saying, hey, I remember one time my brother came to me to admonish me. It was over the phone. I still remember the conversation. It probably happened 15 or 18 years ago. But here's what I remember about the conversation. I remember the preamble was the longest part, right? Before we got to the meaty stuff, the preamble was, hey, Bill, listen. I have something I need to say to you. And it's kind of difficult. And you may not like it. You may not agree with it. You might get mad at me, but I'm just asking you to hear me. Because I think you're doing something that's going to be hurtful to you. You're doing something I think is going to hurt your ministry. And I just really don't want to see that happen. So I don't even want to talk to you about this, but I feel like I need to talk to you. This is all the preamble, right? This is before we got to the thing he thought I needed to change. And you know what? So let me ask you this. So when somebody comes to you with that spirit, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, listen, I know we may not agree on this, but man, I love you, and I'm concerned for you because I see this thing in your life. I see the direction you're walking in. And then they bring to your attention the thing they think is out of line. Are you willing to be open to that, to say, maybe they're right. Let me think about that. Let me consider that. Am I willing to have that spoken in? And may I take it one step further, because we know we live in a time where, again, people are very hesitant to do that. Can I encourage you to do this? Find one or two people in your life. Maybe you already have them. I hope you do. Find one or two people in your life that you open the door for them, that you give them permission, that you go to them and you say, hey, listen, I have a lot of respect for you. I believe you love the Lord, and I believe you love me. And if you see an area of my life that is not okay, would you please love me enough to come tell me? That's hard to do, right? Because that means that sometimes it's going to happen, right? I mean, sometimes they're going to come to you and have to say, hey, remember that time you told me that I should tell you if something's off track? And you take a big gulp and go, not a big gulp, but a big oop, right? And you're like, man, what's coming? What are they going to say? This isn't a happy topic, but it's an important topic. Because when we're out of line, we need somebody to admonish us. We need somebody to help us, correct us, help us get back in line so we can be powerful and do what God wants us to do. Here's the second thing. To empower each other, encourage the faint-hearted. Who are the faint-hearted? I love this. The word literally means, is two Greek words put together, little soul. Somebody of little soul. What does that mean? Faint-hearted is such a great description of that. Somebody who's faint-hearted, right? They're not bold, they're faint-hearted. We might use the word timid. Somebody who's just kind of timid. I don't know how many of you have met my dog, Zoe, man. She's my buddy. But she is timid. Not as bad as she used to be. When we first got her, she was really, really timid. I mean, she was so timid, I think she might have been abused before, because when we first got her, she was just a couple years old. We got her from Animal Rescue League. We went in there, and here's what we learned immediately upon meeting her. if any man approached her. Now, if a lady approached her, she was still timid, right? Still kind of, right? If a man approached her, forgive me, if a man approached her, she peed immediately. I mean, that's just what happened, right? Hey, whoop, you know, I don't know what causes, I don't know what puts those things together, you know, like, but that's what happened. And so, like, her first couple of years with us, we always had to, any man entering our home, we had to give a speech to, which was a little embarrassing. We had to say, listen, our dog's in here, she's friendly, but she's timid, and she'll pee on the floor if you talk to her. So if you could please just ignore her until she gets used to you. Okay, whatever. No, I'm really good with dogs, I understand. But she's timid, right? That's how she responds. She'll cower, her ears will go down, her head will go down, she'll kind of change her body language, she'll go hide. That's how she is, and that's what's being described here. Have you ever felt that way? Some of you maybe never feel timid. You're very bold, very confident. But many of us, most of us, sometime in our life, we feel like this. We'd rather go hide. We'd rather put our head down. We feel a little bit discouraged or despondent. We feel a little bit faint-hearted. The problem with being faint-hearted is it means you don't have power. You don't have the power to boldly live for God and boldly do things that God wants you to do because you're just afraid. You just shrink back from things. I don't say it to be mean. I'm saying sometimes we're faint-hearted. As long as we're faint-hearted, we're not going to be able to accomplish very much. So what do we do for somebody who's faint-hearted? The word he uses here is the word encourage. He says encourage the faint-hearted. That word literally means to speak alongside, right? So somebody who's faint-hearted, what they need to have power in their life, they need somebody to come alongside them and speak to them. To come alongside them and say, man, we're with you, we're for you, you can do this, we got you, come on, God is with you. We encourage the faint-hearted. We cheer them on. In my last church, there was a lady named Kathy Logan. And man, again, I don't know if this sounds goofy to you, but I hope this makes sense. Everybody needs cheerleaders. She's one of my cheerleaders in my last church. And we had got to be friends years before we had, she'd gone to camp with us over and over again. We got to be friends through that. And she served in different ministries I was involved in. We got to be good friends. And when I was preaching more, it was interesting because anytime I was preaching, I'd look out and Kathy Logan, man, she was for me. And I don't know, again, I hope this doesn't sound goofy yet coming from a pastor, but there's times you're up here and you feel like, hey, things are going pretty good. And there's times you're up here going, this is terrible. I don't think I'm saying what I meant to say. I don't think this is coming across the way I meant for it to come across. And no matter what was happening, when things were going good, I'd look out and I'd find Kathy Logan's face. And she's smiling at me and nodding like, come on, come on, come on. And when I was doing terrible, oh man, I didn't want to look at anybody else in the room because I was just embarrassed. I thought this, and I just wanted to say, you know what, forget the message. Well, let's try again next week, right? But you can't really do that because people get upset when you do that. So you just keep slogging through. But when things just weren't going good, you know what I would do? I would look for Kathy Logan's face. Because I would look at her face and she's smiling and nodding still. But in that, again, she may have just been thinking about lunch. I don't know. But here's what I took from it. When I looked out and saw her, what I felt her saying is, come on, Bill, you got this, man. Come on, you can pull this out. Come on. And it was just great to have a cheerleader out there. And here's the crazy thing. I look out and see hundreds of people. One cheerleader made the difference. And isn't that true so often in our lives? Sometimes you are faint-hearted, and what you really need is somebody to come alongside you and cheerlead you, encourage you, to come alongside and speak truth to you and say, man, you got this, you're going to do okay. God is with you, I'm with you, we're behind you. You're going to be, this is going to be okay. And flip it around the other way. Think about this. And again, if you get nothing else, think about this, because I think this is one thing that as I thought of this week, I thought, man, that's interesting. Every single one of us, without exception, every single one of us has the power in our mouth to change somebody's whole day. Every one of us. And I think that's probably one of the most neglected powers we have as a Christian. Every single one of us, if you found somebody, again, maybe somebody you hear, well, they're faint-hearted, I better go talk to them. Well, maybe. Or maybe just anybody. Maybe it's your spouse that needs some encouraging words from you, and you will change her day or his day. Maybe it's your kid, and you just say a few words. You could just say a few words and change their whole day. Or even just somebody in the church you haven't talked to for a while. You can grab them and talk to them for a little bit and just hear where they need some encouragement. Man, it's amazing the ability we have to encourage people. I think this is one of the most neglected gifts we can give to one another. Encouragement. just encouraging somebody who's going through a rough run or just having a down day. Encourage the faint-hearted, he says. Third, he says this, to empower each other, help the weak. Help the weak. The weak are those who are fragile in their faith, maybe susceptible to doubts, maybe susceptible to temptation or error. Oftentimes, this probably describes just immature believers, people who know the Lord but haven't really grown much in their faith yet, and they're just still kind of weak in their faith. How do we empower them? He just says here, we help them. And the word help here literally means to hold something fast or to hold something firmly. In other words, to give something some support. When something is weak, it needs some additional support. Let me give you a goofy example of this. Over a year ago, I can't remember when it happened, but over a year ago, my elbow started hurting me. I can't remember when it first started because it was just so small at first. And I just remember one day I woke up, and throughout the day I just felt like, have you ever just like you slept on it wrong? That's what it felt like. At first it just felt like I think I just slept on it wrong. So I was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of a weird feeling. And I thought, well, it'll get better in a day or two. And it didn't get better in a day or two. And I thought, well, I'm getting older. Maybe it'll get better in a week or two. And it didn't get better in a week or two. And it didn't get better in a month or two. And then, because I'm a guy, forgive me guys, I was a little bit of an idiot about it, right? Because guys, I'm like, I should probably have somebody look at it, but I'm a guy. We don't do that, right? So what do we do instead? We act like there's nothing wrong and it'll probably fix itself, right? Sometimes we do that. And then here's what I got in my head. This is earlier, this is after I got here. A little earlier, a little while ago, like in the spring. That's when I got determined to go. Maybe I just need to work it more. Right? Doesn't that sound like a good idea? I just need to work it out more. I just need to. So man, I still remember I'm carrying mulch around my front yard, doing stuff out there, and I was like, oh, it hurts. Good, it hurts. Just gonna work it out. I don't even know what that makes no sense at all. That's what I did, right? Just keep working it. It'll get better, And then this is the kind of the epitome of my stupidity. I went to the Y. Usually I go to the Y and I just run on the treadmill. I know you can tell, right? But I go there, I run on the treadmill. But then I thought, man, they have all these other machines I'm paying for, and my elbow obviously it needs some strengthening. So I went to the little thing where you do the curls, So I said there, turn the weight down. Okay. There we go. That's better, right? And I would do it. My elbow would just start hurting. I'm like, come on. It's hurting. Oh, come on. Dumbest thing you could do, right? Because eventually I go to the doctor for something else. I'm not going to him for this. I go to the doctor for something else, and while I'm there, I said, and something's wrong with my elbow. And he did a few things with me, and he goes, you got tennis elbow. He says, what have you been doing with it? And I said, well, I've been doing everything with it. I've been working it out. And he's like, don't do that. Right? That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to leave it alone. It's messed up. It's broken. It's weak. It needs to heal. He's like, every time you do that, you're making it worse. You're hurting it more. And I'm like, oh, I should have come to see you a while ago. And here he told me a few things to do, but one of the things he told me to do is buy this. I hate this thing, to be honest with you. I don't even like wearing stuff on me. But he said, go get one of these armbands. So I go get the armband, and I put it on there. And here's my first thought. Again, I'm just cynical. I'm going, how is this going to help this, right? How is this, wrapping this stupid thing I'm on, but I did pay him good money to tell me what to do, so I better do what he says. So I did it, and I put it on there. But here's, why do you put this on here? Again, didn't you come to hear my medical history? Or is that why you're here this morning? This is the point. This helps the strength of my arm, the parts that aren't weak, to give added support, so this can heal and restore and repair and get healthy and get stronger. And again, I don't tell that to share a story, but I tell that that's what he's saying here. He's saying when part of the body is weak, right? When part of the church body, when somebody is weak, we need to come and give added support. Those who are stronger need to get around them and support them and help them because they need time to heal. They need time to get stronger. So first of all, on the one side, are you willing? Are you willing at times when you're weak to allow other people to support you and help you? Because sometimes we won't. Sometimes we don't have that humility to do that. I'm fine. I don't need. I'm fine. And you're not fine. And you need somebody to support you. And you need somebody to come around and hold you firm. You need somebody to give you additional support. Are you willing to receive that and allow somebody to empower you by giving you that additional support? But on the other hand, from the other perspective, if you feel strong, when you feel strong, do you have the compassion to help the weak? Because you know what's weird is sometimes when we're strong, we get a little like, we look at people who are weak and we're like, what's wrong with you? Come on. Pull yourself up. Let's go. It's kind of like I did my elbow. Just keep going. Just keep pushing. That's not what they need. If you're strong and somebody is weak, it isn't. Well, why can't you be strong like I am right now? What they need is, how can I support that person? How can I help them so they can become strong? What help do they need in this time of weakness? And that's one of the ways he says we can empower those people who are weak. And then the fourth thing he says in this verse is be patient with all. And I think when he says that, he's looking back on these other things, right? As we do these other things, be patient with all. Because people don't always grow and change as quickly as we wish they would. Have you noticed? I don't grow and change as quickly as I wish I did. Other people that you try to help, they don't always, sometimes it takes the idle a while to listen to a warning. Sometimes it takes a lot for the faint-hearted to become bold. Sometimes it takes a while for the weak to become strong. It doesn't mean there shouldn't be progress. It doesn't mean they shouldn't, hopefully they're growing but sometimes it takes a little while. We need to be patient with them as we minister to them and serve them in that way. We're patient with each other because it takes time to fully charge, right? It takes time to, wouldn't it be great? You ever get frustrated when you plug your phone in and then you just sit there and watch it? It's not charging fast enough? Am I the only one that does that? I gotta go, I'm gonna ride my bike wherever I need to take my phone, but it's only at like 40%. I better charge it for a while. Then I charge it. I just sit there and watch it. Come on. Okay, 41. Okay, come on, right? Sometimes it takes a while to charge, and that's true in our spiritual life too. Sometimes when you're weak, sometimes it takes a while to get strong. When you're faint-hearted, sometimes it takes a while to get bold. So we need to be patient with each other as we grow and charge. Now, before I'm done, I want to go back and focus on a word toward the beginning of this verse. Chapter 5, verse 14. And we urge you, the next word is brothers, right? We urge you, brothers, and obviously that means brothers and sisters. That means family members, siblings. These four things he's asking us to do is based on the fact that we're brothers and sisters. The four things he's asking us to do assume a family relationship. This is why, one of the things we have to be careful about in church is developing relationships with each other. Church cannot just be, please let us not settle for church being to where we're an audience, right? We're members of the same audience. We come to the show, and we watch the show, and we listen to the music, and we hear the word, if that's all church is to you, I'm glad you have those things, that you're hearing from the word of God and singing, but you're missing out on a huge component of church, which is family. We're supposed to be family. We're supposed to have relationships like family. We're not strangers who get together and are polite to each other and then leave. We are family. So man, I just encourage you and challenge you. Some of you maybe feel like, well, I got that. I do that all the time. Great. And some of you maybe not. I don't know. But all of us need to have relationships with other people in the church. And if you don't have that, I really encourage you to think of ways that you can get a little more connected with other people. Because there are going to be times when you're the strong one, and there's somebody that needs you to pour power into them. And there's going to be times you are the... Did I do that right? There's going to be times people need your power. There's going to be times you need power from other people. And none of that's going to happen if you're not already connected to somebody. That's just the reality. That's just the truth. These things only happen when we have relationships with each other. So let me just suggest a few things to you. One thing I would suggest to you, if you're like, I need to build some relationships here. I need to get to know people better. I need to be more connected with people. One thing I would encourage, I'll just give you a few ideas. One is this: hang out after church. When church is over, you don't have to make it. Now I know today you have to because it's the fair, right? Today it's going to be like the rapture happened, right? Everybody, just got to get out of here, right? Bill, you about done? Come on, the fair's going on, all right? I understand that. But not today, okay? But other Sundays. Man, when church is over, hang out. Talk to somebody. If somebody you don't know very well, talk to them. Hey, man, I don't think I really had a chance to meet you and talk to you. Get to know them. I know it's awkward. That's okay. It's okay to be awkward. Be awkward for a little bit, and then you become friends, and you have a relationship. Maybe it's somebody you know, and you know something going on in your life, and you go, I keep needing to talk to them about that. Maybe it's somebody you've been praying for. You ever had somebody you pray for, but you never talk to them? Man, how encouraging it is to them for you to come up to them and say, man, I've just been praying for you. I wonder how that's going for you. So even just that small step, hang out after church and talk and chat. Now listen, I'm not going to be judgmental and stand at the door and go, oh, look, they just went right to their car. Okay, that's not it. But I'm just encouraging you. One way to build those relationships, hang out after church, hang out and talk with people. The second thing, and I've mentioned this a few times, but I'm going to keep mentioning it. I really encourage you to think about going to Sunday school. I know it's an hour earlier, but you know what? There's time. Again, I quoted Andy Stanley before because I think what he says here is good. He says circles are better than rows. When we come in here, we sit in rows, and that's great. Man, I know different classes do things differently. In my Sunday school class, we sit around a table, and we come in the first 15 minutes or so, it's just chatting. Well, what a waste of time. That's not a waste of time. That's time we get to know each other. Hey, how's it going? Oh, you just dropped your daughter off at college? How's she doing? It's time to get to know each other, build relationships, and get connected with each other. I would encourage you to do that. Another thing you can do is attend when we have activities. Sunshiners. If you're a retiree and you don't come to Sunshiners every month, man, you ought to come. Because it's a chance to every month get together with those people again and have fellowship with them and connect with them. When we have other events, and again, this isn't just to plug this, but it includes it. The men's breakfast is coming up. Guys, come to that. Guys, sometimes, again, if I could just be, guys, sometimes we're the worst. Sometimes we isolate ourselves. We pull away from other people because we go, well, I don't really know anybody, so I don't want to go. Well, you're not going to know anybody if you don't go. Yeah, but if I go, then it's awkward, it's weird. And guys, we tend to isolate ourselves. Now, ladies, again, forgive me if it's a sexist generalization, but it's generally true. Guys, more than ladies, generally. Guys, we pull ourselves, we become very on our own. And then the problem is when we go into a tough time, there's no relationship already there. And that we don't know what to do. We need to form the relationships before we need them. So when we need them, we have them. And so I really encourage you, do things like that. Come to the men's breakfast. Ladies, when you have activities coming up. And you know, one of the things, I've been a little bit involved in the ladies' discussion about the activities coming up. And you know how it always goes? It goes like this. Again, forgive me if I'm being too... This is just true. It's, well, we can do a thing where we go around and look at ladies' gardens, but some ladies don't like looking at ladies' gardens. Well, you know, we can go out to eat, but if we go out to eat, not everybody likes to go out to eat. Well, you know, we can do this, but not everybody likes this. Can I tell you a secret? Nobody likes anything. I shouldn't say that. Nobody likes everything, right? And everybody doesn't like anything, right? There's not one thing that everybody's going to go to. Can I please suggest to you, guys and ladies and everybody, don't go to a thing because you like the thing. Go to the thing because you care about the other people going to the thing. Go to dinner because there's other people at the dinner who need to get to be around you and hang out with you and get to know you. Don't go because you like arts. Who cares if you like arts? Go anyway. It's about the people, not about the thing you're doing together. And we try to pick things that we think people will enjoy, but whether you enjoy it or not, do it anyway. Because it's about the relationship. It's about that. It's not about the activity is just an excuse to get you together. Again, I feel like I'm chewing people out. I don't need to. My point is this. Make the effort to be family. Family's hard. Spending time with family is hard. Getting to know people is hard. Putting forth the time and the energy to become interconnected is hard. But it is so worth it. Because we need each other. There are times you are the weak one and you need somebody to empower you. There's times you're the faint-hearted one and you need somebody to help you be bold. Let me share one more verse with you and then I'll be done. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says this. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, right, his friend. But woe to him, notice it's a warning, woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. Again, catch what he's saying. He's saying, he doesn't say, when you fall, look for somebody to help you. He says, walk with somebody now. So when you fall, they're already there. Walk with somebody now so when they fall, you're already there. Let us be a church that says we're going to empower other people and we're going to let other people empower us. And we're going to do the relationship work it takes to get interconnected enough to where that really happens. All right? One more thought. God designed us to need each other. I was talking about this with my family this week. One of the questions that came up was, well, what if we don't need somebody? Well, we're just fine. Then there's something we're not seeing. Because isn't it interesting? God intentionally designed us to need each other. He didn't make anybody that didn't need anybody. Isn't that interesting? Even when he describes the makeup of the church, he said, well, some are your feet, some are your hands, right? He says, y'all need each other. Well, I don't need anybody. You're wrong. You need people and they need you. Let's be willing to be relational enough to do these things that he calls us to do. All right? Let's go ahead and pray. Father in heaven, we just bow before you, and God, we just praise you for your incredible wisdom. Lord, I think, had we been in charge, we may have just made everybody self-sufficient. Nobody needs anybody. Everybody's just fine on their own. But God, it's amazing how you so wisely designed us specifically to need each other, specifically to have deficiencies so that we could depend on other people. Father, I pray for this church. But first of all, God, I thank you so much for, when I came into this church a year ago, Lord, it just seems like there is already so much a good sense here of family, already so much a good sense of unity and people who love each other and care for each other and minister to each other. Father, I pray that you would just add to that. I pray that you would help us to know, how do we even improve on that? How do we make it even more so? Even more so we love each other. Even more so we know each other. Even more so we help each other. Help it to be that this truly is, as you designed it, it really is a family of people who meet together to serve you and worship you. Father, we are your family. We thank you for that. We pray in Jesus' name.